Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg, and welcome back to Hanging with Mangg. Today we're playing Kingdom Hearts 3, and I don't know about this game, man. I guess, you know, if people would have asked me, like, oh, are you a fan of Kingdom Hearts? I would have been like, eh. I played 1 and 2, and that was it. I never replayed them. And I don't even really remember being like, wow, yeah, those were great games. I just remember being really confused. And just sort of blah. Just blah. I think it's for a couple reasons. A few reasons. Like, one is...
Sarge, roll call.
First of all, I play I play games for the gameplay, right?
Game section.
Oh boy, let's go!
Oh, God. And I just don't find the gameplay of the Kingdom Hearts series that compelling. It definitely leans more action than RPG. And I've said that I like RPGs because of choice. That's my favorite aspect of RPGs, is the amount of choices available to you as a player throughout the game and throughout replaying the game. And Kingdom Hearts does not excel in that category. And so really it's just like, yeah, you can sort of decide if you want to just bash things or use your magic, and you can get different keyblades that make you better at bashing things or using magic. Okay. And, so that alone, the gameplay has never really thrilled me. And they throw in all these, like, mini games and side shit, and it's just like, oh, God. Secondly, the whole Disney aspect does not really appeal to me. And I think that's meant to be a huge part of the appeal. It's like, hey, look, you're in the universe of Toy Story. And it's just like, I'm not... I think even when I was a kid and I watched Toy Story, I was like, yeah, it was pretty good. And then that was it. I can't remember the last time I watched Toy Story. I think maybe I saw Toy Story 2 once. No, maybe I saw half of it. And I definitely didn't see Toy Story 3. Like, Disney, animated movies in general, just... That's a bygone era for me. I've matured. I got nothing against them. You know, people, plenty of adults and stuff watch Disney movies, but almost never would I think to watch one. I always thought the best one was Rescuers Down Under. I don't know if that... I think that was a Disney movie. But even that, I haven't watched in like a decade, so... So that whole aspect... And so far, it's funny because Kingdom Hearts 3 sort of starts you out with like a lot of classic stuff. Like, the first world is like Hercules. And now I went to the Toy Story world. It's like, I know they've made more movies since the late 90s, so I'm sure we'll get to them, but they want to ease you into that. So that's not a big fact. And then, you know, in addition to all the Disney shit, they just cram in all this, like, basically all the worst aspects of every Final Fantasy game. They cram in there. And the dialogue and the plot points are just so atrocious. And that's a common nitpick of the Kingdom Hearts series. I mean, everyone talks about that, how ridiculously convoluted it is, and yet it's also, like, infantile, and it's just... But, it, you know, Goofy is just a fucking chuckle fuck, and Donald, like, was his voice always that atrocious, or is it just I'm getting older, or I don't know. So I've just been pretty much skipping all the cutscenes, because, you know, you got Mickey Mouse talking to some, like, Sephiroth-looking character, talking about God knows what, and I'd rather just sit there and watch Gordon Ramsay yell at people. Just whatever. But that does sort of lend to these sort of problems where I have no idea where to go. I'm supposed to follow Rex to the video games section. I think that's the dinosaur, which would make sense. But I have no idea where the video games section is. I've literally been in this one area for like 3 hours. Just because I keep getting like bored to tears, and so I just let it sit there while I go off and do something else for an hour. So yeah, I'm not crazy about it. To be honest, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I did buy Resident Evil 2, the remake, and I did beat that. I'd probably say that's a better game. And I don't even really love Resident Evil that much, but at least it didn't bore me to tears. That's a better game in my opinion. I'm sure there are plenty of people that love the Kingdom Hearts. But anyways, this week on this channel, we've had Warhammer Space Marine, which has one video left, so we're just about done with that. And we had Final Fantasy 13 Startup, which is, I'm fairly confident saying it's the most hated of Final Fantasies. I don't think anyone really... yeah, I'm pretty confident in saying that. And I wouldn't say I hate it, but it is my least favorite of the Final Fantasies, the main series. So, you know, we're just gonna get through it. You know, so we have video evidence that I beat it. And, yeah, so after Warhammer, there's gonna be more Warhammer as we move on to Warhammer 40k Mechanicus, which is a turn-based strategy, tactical XCOM game. Whatever the term for that is. Oh, here, it's probably at the game store. Fuck. I'm so stupid. That's my bad. Yeah, so that's going to continue then. You know, more Warhammer. I don't know how many of the 40k games we're going to play, because that will probably get old. But we have all of February where there's really nothing that I want to play. And then in March, we have Sekiro. And, you know, everybody and their grandma is going to be doing Let's Plays of that, me included. So, for February, it's just, you know, sit tight. Sit tight.
There we go. Next.
So, not the not the most exciting time on Mangg's LPs. And I feel like I am probably a YouTube statistical anomaly with having both a really successful channel and a really unsuccessful channel at the same time. Like, that can't be too many. There can't be too many YouTubers
keep 'em coming.
with over 200,000 subscribers that also run another channel that gets like 10 views per video. Maybe, but I think it's not the norm. But I wouldn't have it any other way. The Exploring series has been just on a rampage this week. Just blowing my mind with how well it's doing. Like, this last week, I have been averaging like 1,200 new subscribers per day and like 160,000 views per day. Which, I mean, maybe that doesn't sound impressive. It is. I'm pretty sure it is. I'm pretty sure it is. The money is impressive. I can at least know that. I think 2019 is probably the year that I move into a new home. I'll say that. So yeah, it's been very exciting. The reason that it's been blowing up this week has been of two videos, both SCP ones, the Anantashesha 3000 video and the Beneficial SCPs video. Both have been just blowing up. Like, every day they get a resurgence as YouTube's just like, hey, you've got some good stuff here. Let me recommend this to everyone we know. And then it just, okay. And, you know, it recommends it to people that don't know anything about SCP. Because I know this because they leave comments saying, what the fuck is this? I don't know anything about this. Is this real? What is going on? So I know they're recommending it to people that don't know anything about SCP, and yet, you know, I'm blowing up with subscribers. And so it kind of makes me laugh that there are people whose first introduction to the SCP universe is Beneficial SCPs. Like, sort of the antithesis of what a lot of SCP universe is. And so I think it's pretty funny, but as long as you're getting into the universe, it's all good. And as long as you're watching my ads, it's all good. Thank you, Gnome Dolph. I say that Exploring series is my work, and this is my hobby. So, all of my free time, all of my time pretty much goes into YouTube. But that's the way I like it. You know, I like having this channel where I can just, I don't have to do any editing really, and I can just talk and just have fun. But, you know, you gotta pay the bills, and that's what work is for, which just happens to also be YouTube. So, yeah, you know, the Exploring series is blowing up. A lot of people coming in. I released the first Warhammer 40k video, which I was very concerned with how flawed it would be, how many mistakes there would be, because generally when I do a first video for a series, especially if I try to go for a big scope, trying to cover so much ground on something that I don't really understand that well, there tends to be mistakes. like the first Middle-earth video, for example. But there was only a handful of
You all right,
relatively
sir?
small mistakes overall,
I'm just
which
fine.
was good.
And you?
But more importantly, like, I got a lot of praise in the comment section.
We like to rest your buzz.
Come on, fellas.
Of people saying that it was a really, like, fantastic overview and introduction to the Warhammer 40k universe. People were saying that, like, no one had really ever covered that much lore in one 30-minute video before, and that makes me really just, like, giddy. To do something that really no one has done on YouTube, and to do it pretty well, pretty good, that's exciting. So, you know, it didn't blow up in views, and I would have been absolutely just shocked if it did. That would have been an anomaly in itself. But, it's got a decent amount of views, and there's a lot of people very excited for the future of that series. So it's gonna be pretty good. I think it's unlikely it'll be as big as SCP, because for SCP, it's really a growing universe, a growing fandom, and there aren't really any other channels that are doing what I'm doing. But, you know, I never know. I have no idea anymore. I just do stuff. So I'm already partway through working on the video on the Emperor of Mankind. And yeah, just see how it goes. I did put together a video for SCP-3999, which is a very sort of odd, meta, weird SCP, to say the least. And to be perfectly honest, I don't actually care for the SCP, but, you know, it won the Patreon poll. It's my job to cover it. It's popular. I'm gonna cover it. So yeah. It's all good. It's all good on the Exploring series. Let's see, what else? I guess that's about it.
The entrance was blocked by blocks?
I don't really foresee a time in the future where I'm not working 7 days a week. And I'm not working like 10 hours a day and just destroying myself. You know, I don't do anything but work. But it's just the way the schedule works out, the way I'm at the most comfortable of working on 2 videos a week does involve working every single day. And you know, when you're on the internet making content for fans and stuff, it's very, very difficult to slow down or stop.
How are we gonna
And this is a very common problem over on Twitch, where if you're not on and you're not streaming, you are not building your career, your Twitch career. And so you have these Twitch streamers that go for 12 hours a day or whatever the insane stuff they do. And they just basically wreck themselves by non-stop working. Which, I mean, that's not a problem exclusive to internet careers. But, you know, with the internet, you're interacting directly with people, with fans. And so that just continually drives you to do more. And so it's just this rationale of, you know, I could do one video a week, and I could take things easier, and I could have a couple days off on the weekends every week. Or I could put out 2 videos a week, and there you go. Double it up. And so that's just what happens. I think probably at some point I'll get lazy enough where I will take a few weeks off and just only do 1 video a week, which is not exactly a vacation, but it's something. But yeah, I mean, with how many views, subscribers, and the, you know, the revenue that they're putting out the SCP video every week, and I really want to build up this Warhammer thing as well, so I can have like 2 huge series at the same time. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, you know, insert Woody Harrelson gif of him wiping his tears with dollar bills or whatever, but yeah, it's still, you know, it's a dream job, certainly. I'm quite happy with how everything's turning out. And it's all good. So, don't cry for me, YouTube. This week...
Huh. What about over there?
For roll manging, there was nothing. We just... It's kind of unfortunate. We got like 4 people together, which, you know, we did RPG, we did roll manging for a while with only 4 people. But now that we have a 6-person group, you know, if we ever get down to 4, it's like, oh, well, we can't do it this week. You know, 2 people would miss out. So it's sort of a bummer, because that means it feels like we end up doing less RPG nights, role-manging nights, when I'm pretty sure the original argument for bringing on more people, or, you know, a perk of bringing on more people was like, oh, well, you know, if we ever have a couple people gone, we can still play because we have a bigger group. You know, we'll always have, you know, 4 or so. But anyways, in lieu of that, we played Forbidden Stars, Warhammer 40k board game that we've played once before. And I told them, you know, we're doing this because of my job. Just suck it up. It really... That game is, like, deceptively long. The box says 2 to 3 hours. We played for 3 hours or so, and we got halfway through the game. We got through 4 out of the 8 rounds needed to finish the game. I was happy, though, that I, you know, it's sort of a 4X game. But no, it's not a 4X game. Not really. It's really just a war game across space. Like, that's all you're doing is just fighting each other. I mean, there's some building units and stuff involved, but it's a war game. Dudes on a map game. And it features the Ultramarines, the Eldar, the Orcs and the Chaos Space Marines that I think belong to Korn. And so I played as the Chaos Space Marines. It sort of just ended up that way, although I'd say they are probably my favorite of the four. But I didn't really pick them, but... I got absolutely just demolished. I got completely crushed. I was, like, eliminated after a few rounds. Basically, because I went to just constant war with Mert, who was just sort of near me, even though it was really not in my best interest to do so. And we just sort of wrecked each other. He didn't do very well at all in the grand scheme of things. And, I think Ziggy ended up winning. Yeah, the Eldar. Because he basically just ran rampant over my diminished forces, and yeah, that was pretty much that. You know, it's a decent game. It's just really long, and for a game of that length with space and all that, we'd rather just have a Twilight Imperium event. You know, because that involves all the politics and trading and negotiation and diplomacy and all that good stuff. And that appeals to me a lot more. And really, you know, Twilight Imperium-esque game in the 40k universe wouldn't really work, because there isn't that much, like, diplomacy and trading going on. I mean, I think the Tau try to do diplomacy, but you know, that doesn't really go that far. Anyways, so, you know, it was a fun enough experience. I'm glad that I understand the lore now of what's going on in that game. But hopefully we get back to roll Mangg. Anyways, during that game, I was talking to them about the actual war game, Warhammer 40k 8th edition, the war game. Because, like I said, I do think it's cool. I do think it's cool, but I told them, like, if I knew we were gonna play once a week, like, I would be willing to buy us all armies, and we could just play once a week, and it would be awesome. If they were willing to buy their own armies, and we played once a month, that would also be pretty cool. But I wasn't willing to buy them all armies if we just played once a month. That's just not really worth it. But we did decide that we could start out sort of on a pretty small scale and just try it out with like a 2v2 game with a handful of units each and see how it goes. And so that's what we did. I already had, you know, since I bought the starter kit, we have some Ultramarines, some Chaos Space Marines. So I bought some Necrons, because they're like my favorite now. And I bought some Orc Boys. And I don't know when we're gonna have a game, but we're gonna give it a try, you know. For work. It's for my job. I bought the Orc Boys, like, used, and they were, like, pre-assembled and pre-painted and stuff, and they're not, like, fantastic looking. They're fairly basic, but they do have a few colors involved in their color scheme in the painting. And they're already assembled. They're, you know, they're ready to go, and there's a couple different types of them. I was like, this is good. And I bought the Necrons because the picture on eBay looked really cool. I was like, wow, these Necrons look badass, man. I gotta have them. I gotta have them. But the Necrons did not come pre-assembled or pre-painted, and what's worse is they were like old school miniatures from Games Workshop, because now it's all like snapped together. Like, you barely need any glue whatsoever. These were old school, where everything had to be glued, and they came in like 12 different pieces, and you had to glue everything together. And it took me like a day, because I'm not very good with with an X-Acto knife and model glue and stuff, and it was just sort of, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And they're not perfect, like I'm sure professional miniature people would be shocked and horrified at what I did. Like, there's all sorts of little, like, cut marks, not cut mark, there's a term for it, where it's not like a clean cut off of the sprue. There's all that all over the place, and some things didn't fit together perfectly, and yeah, it's rough. But I think they look pretty cool, even unpainted, because they're guns. They're Gauss rifles, or whatever the hell they are. They get like this cool green tube. So you do get a little splash of color in there, which makes it look cool. And they come with a few like little scarabs. And so the scarabs look pretty cool. And if it wasn't like my personal army that I was planning to use, I'd probably be pretty upset that I had to go through all that work. But as it stands, I probably have the best looking minis. The Buster Ring. Oh, nice. Yes, I don't know when that's gonna happen. I also, because I've been on eBay a lot this week, I was like, you know what would be cool? Is like a Warhammer 40k card game, kind of like Hearthstone, where you had like all the different factions, and like you had things were on a much larger scale, so you like commanded whole, like a card would be like a whole army or a battalion or, you know, shit like that. And it was all like high quality art, and that would be really cool. Like, if that doesn't exist, I should design that. That's so cool. And so I looked it up, and yeah, it pretty much does exist, of course. There's a card game by Fantasy Flight called 40k Conquest. It's out of print now because, of course, the license agreement between Games Workshop and Fantasy Flight dissolved. But they did put out a good number of cards. 2 deluxe sets and a whole bunch of card packs and stuff. So I was like, wow, this looks pretty cool. I should buy the core set and give it a try.
Hey, what's that?
A cactus?
Yep, and it's our way up to the Dark Corridor.
But then I remembered Netrunner and how I made the mistake of like buying the core set and then slowly buying like deluxe sets and card packs and things like that, and then much later going on eBay and buying a whole lot with like gobs of cards for a pretty cheap price, and I was like, maybe I should just skip a step. So I went on eBay and bought a lot. Like a lot of Conquest, which came with the core set, 2 deluxe set, like both deluxe sets, and 12 card packs. It's an LCG, so, you know, you end up with almost all the cards. For like 80 bucks. Which, that's a huge amount of savings. It's like, I don't know how often I'll play this. I know I'll play it a few times, at least. And it's gonna look really cool. And, you know, it's a like business expense, so it's all good. It's all good. Anyways. Moving on. So we did not play Stars Without Number this week. Like, just look at fucking Goofy and Don. Oh my god. I did not do Mangg in this week. No Stars Without Number, but I did play an RPG, or I DM'd an RPG. A little bit of Dungeon World with the family.
Try this.
They are they are voracious in their interest in Dungeon World and RPGs now. Because it looked like we weren't gonna play this week. My sister was like super busy, and my brother-in-law just could not do it. And they were like, "What? We're doing it. We're doing it." So we had a session yesterday without my brother-in-law involved. They wanted to play so badly. And the session did not go as perfectly as I think they would have liked. It was a little messy. You know, it was sort of an early session, and I think I was just a little tired and cranky, so I was probably a little meaner than I should have been, maybe. But, you know, last time they had their situation with the Weevil and turning in this criminal and figuring out if he was actually a good guy, but he wasn't a good guy, but, you know, my sister went to prison to try and see if he was innocent and all that kind of stuff. But they got paid, they got quite a bit of money, and you know, they got her out of prison, and everything seemed to work out. So they took their newfound wealth, and they immediately went to the stables, or whatever, and they all bought horses. Like, good horses. They wanted, like... I mean, they were in, like, the richest city in the region, and they wanted, like, the best horses. So they spent, like, 250 gold on these horses. They spent, like, a fourth of their wealth on these horses. It's like, okay, if that's what they want, then, you know, they can afford it. Whatever. I wasn't sure what they were going to do with the money. You know, when I get a lot of money, I build an airship. So, if they want to buy some really good horses with horse armor, DLC, they can do that. So they got their nice horses. They bought some like supplies, some like healing potions. They bought everything they could think of that they might need, which admittedly was not a huge
So Xehanort got away again.
list.
Yeah, he's a big chicken.
Oh look, a Keyblade with an emphasis on strength. Holy shit! I don't have one of those. Oh wait, that's the first extra Keyblade you get. I know, there's other abilities involved, blah, blah, blah. So they set out because they wanted to go to this city of Silvery Moon, where they had a tip-off that, or a tip, I don't know if there's an off, a tip, that in this carriage station next to this tower in the town, in the carriage, there was like this secret compartment that had a bunch of magic items. And so I'm like, okay, this will be interesting to see how they tackle this, because the encounter in the book says that in the carriage house, upstairs there are 2 human guards, but the guards are actually cambions, or cambions, I don't know how it's pronounced, in disguise. And a cambion is the offspring of like a succubus and a human. So they're like half demon, meaning they're fairly powerful. And they are completely loyal to this family of noble wizards or whatever. And the carriage, when the door is open to the carriage, an alarm spell goes off, which notifies both the cambions and the female wizard living in the tower next door. And she's a 9th level wizard, which is more powerful than they are. I mean, I'm using Dungeon World, so, which goes to level 10, whereas D&D goes to 20, so it's sort of like half level, but it's not, obviously it's not a one-to-one comparison, so it's hard to say. I would say she's like a level 4 wizard, which is, you know, they're level 3 right now. And they were pretty far from this city. Like, the region that Storm King's Thunder takes place in, the Sword Coast, is really big. And eventually you do get, they do have access to multiple forms of, like, flight or air travel. They can actually get an airship. They can have a dragon, like, team up with them and fly them around. They can team up with, like, this cloud giant that can use his castle or whatever to fly around. They have griffins or something. Like, there's multiple forms of air travel that they can have access to, because otherwise it takes a long time. If they just took, like, a path as the crow flies through, like, the Lurk Woods, it would have been 300 miles. Otherwise, they had to go around on the roads, and it would have been 700 miles. They decided that they didn't want to risk their brand new horses by going through the Lurk Woods. So, they took the long way round. And there's a lot of travel in this campaign. And so the big question is, you know, how do you make traveling interesting? And you could just say, okay, you get there. Let's move on. But there are interesting situations that can arise just spontaneously that don't have to strictly do with the main plot line. You know, you can find some ruins or something like that. Yeah, you can find something interesting that leads you off on a side quest or who knows what. And so there's always random encounter tables, which are never that exciting. The book does outline a bunch of random or specific encounters you can run, but they're pretty much all combat. It's all combat. It's just like, yeah, here's a bunch of barbarians that they attack. It's like, for fuck's sake, that's not interesting. There's nothing interesting to come from that. Unless you make it interesting, but I know they're not going to do that. There are apps for your phone that you can download that have like all sorts of random tables and things you can just tap a button on. But they're always just too general or too weird. I don't know. It's just... So I thought, okay, how about we actually do this like the Dungeon World way with player input, which I've been avoiding because, you know, they're pretty new. But I was like, let's try it. Let's ask them, what do you encounter on this journey? I specifically said, what threat do you encounter? But I probably should have just asked, what do you encounter? Because the players will either be realistic, or, you know, they won't just be like, I find the Fountain of Youth, or, you know, some bullshit like that. And they'll actually come up with, like, a threat. Or they will try to be cheesy and bullshitty and say, I find the Fountain of Youth. And then you throw, like, a fucking wrench in the engine and, you know, put a twist on it. And maybe some other people also found the Fountain of Youth at the same time, or maybe the Fountain of Youth is cursed in some way, or it's been bespoiled and you have to restore it, and that's a side quest. Or maybe the Fountain of Youth is exactly what it is, but the way that it works is not to their liking, or something like that. Who knows? You know, a lot of tips for Dungeon World involve taking some burden off of the DM and throwing it over to the players to come up with things. And I think when Ziggy ran it for us, he sort of overdid it, and he involved us a little bit too much. At least that seems to be his complaint. Whereas so far, I have not really tapped into that at all. But I think there is a happy medium there where things can be interesting by involving player input, so I might start to do it some more. So I asked my sister what threat they encounter, and she said a bear. I was like, okay, I don't know how to make that too interesting. Although, maybe I should have had the bear be, like, infected or something like that. That's probably what I should have done. But like I said, it was early. I wasn't thinking clearly. So I was just like, okay, it's a bear. It's like some feral bear that comes charging at them while they're like camping, setting up the camp. And basically, they just killed the bear. It was not the interesting encounter I wanted it to be. They just killed the bear. But then, you know, my sister has this power for her character where she can take a trophy from an enemy, and she gains a move. Now, specifically, the ability says it's a non-magical move, which means it's pretty mundane. It's not going to be that exciting. And really, it's sort of equivalent to the difficulty of the enemy that they defeated. And so she had her current trophy from a giant. And remember, I had given her the ability to invoke this trophy and throw something as if she had a giant's strength. Which I was really worried that they would find a way to just ridiculously abuse it, and it would be crazy. That was not the case. She seemed to think that, oh man, if I get this bear, I'm gonna become like a bear warrior or something. Like, I'm gonna be amazing at fighting. And I'm like, you can throw... I didn't say anything during this whole discussion, but I was like, you can throw stuff with the strength of a giant. Like, you know how powerful that is? You know how powerful that is? Like... the things you can do with that. You can just pick somebody up and throw them, like, 500 meters into the distance. Unless they're like a wizard that can fly, they're probably dead. Just done. All sorts of stuff you can do with that ability. And I think she maybe had forgotten the whole non-magical aspect of it. And maybe I should have said something. Maybe I should have said, like, you know, your giant ability is pretty powerful, you sure? Blah, blah, blah. But I tend to be a hands-off DM, I guess. I just expect people to learn from their mistakes. And this was certainly a mistake. Under no condition would the bear be a better choice. Even if you just look at it from, like, a difficulty aspect. It was far easier to kill this bear than the giant. Why would they think it would be better? I have no idea. I was sort of stunned. But she's like, okay, I take the bear as a trophy and I get rid of the hair. The giant hair. I'm like, okay, you gain the ability to roar like a bear on command. And they were just like, what? Are you kidding? Like, they were shocked that it was so garbage compared to the giant. I'm like, what do you expect? It's a bear. It's not a giant. I spent all this time building up, like, how powerful and huge and strong the giants are. And they just thought, like, oh, a bear. Like, I don't know what they were thinking. So then they were like, I had been talking a little bit last time about, like, the power of magic and magic abilities. Because, you know, I ride home with my mom, and so I always spend time after a session talking about pretty much usually talking about magic and how they're missing out on certain things and they're sort of handicapping themselves. And I was talking about the bag of holding they had and some of the, like, just the things they could try messing around with. And so they're like, okay, take the bag and turn it inside out. And so I think traditionally, if you turn a bag of holding inside out, it, like, forcefully expels all of the contents. And that's, I think, what I was going to have it do. But they specifically took the time to remove everything from it first before they did that. And so I was like, okay. So they turn it inside out, and really nothing happens. I was like, okay, turn it inside out, nothing really happens, but the interior of the bag, which is now the exterior, is really strange. It's almost like a black hole. Because I figured, you know, this is like a portal to an extra dimensional space. It's gotta look pretty weird. And so they were like, okay, hey, reach in and touch it. Now again, it was early, and I am probably at fault here for misunderstanding. Because I thought this was my aunt doing the action. And so I thought she was touching, like, the exterior, like the black hole stuff. I thought she was just reaching over and touching it. What I later learned, what she actually was doing was reaching into the bag. Normally, it's just inside out. So really, she was like touching the cloth of it. I misunderstood. We retconned this later so that it worked out. But I decided she was touching this weird portal nonsense with her hand. I decided, like, okay, you lose your hand. Like, just cleanly severed. It's just gone. And so they tried, like, dumping out the bag and turning it inside and out and all that, and the hand was just gone. Again, this was where maybe I was a little too cruel. Losing a hand in Dungeon World is not that big of a deal. There are plenty of ways to bring it back, but, you know. Okay, you lose a hand. So they were freaking out a little bit. But my mom is playing a paladin who took a cleric move, allowing her to perform like a miracle related to her god. And she worships the god of healing. Very direct. And so she wanted to perform a miracle to restore this lost hand. And this is basically the cleric equivalent to the wizard ritual that allows you to do all sorts of pretty powerful things. But the DM gets to sort of decide the conditions that you have to fulfill in order to make this happen. It's very freeform, it's very cool. It's a big part of why I want to play Dungeon World again. It's just these big freeform abilities that can basically start like almost mini campaigns on their own, just trying to fulfill a ritual. And so I was thinking about this, okay, she's trying to restore this hand, which is, for all intents and purposes, gone. Not even, like, in the physical realm anymore. It is in an alternate dimension, floating through some extra-dimensional plane somewhere. She needs to basically create a new hand. And so I decided that the requirements for completing this miracle, she needed to be in a temple to the god of healing. I figured that was probably most significant miracles are going to require something like that. So that was basic. She needed to offer a tribute of 200 gold. Which is a pretty common D&D thing of, you know, doing like powerful clerical magic and stuff and wizard magic. It often requires money. It's like, okay, that's not too bad. But then the tricky part, and I knew the tricky part, she would need to have a replacement. She would need to have a replacement for the hand. And I sort of like this because I thought it was fairly open, the things that they could do. I didn't really provide any stipulations. I just said she needed to have a replacement. And so, of course, the most direct way is to just chop off somebody's hand, and there you go, you've got another hand. They could have gone to like a grave or something and taken somebody's hand that was already dead. They could even have used like a skeleton hand, although, you know, the appearance of the new hand would be a little questionable. They could use some other alternative, like they could take like clay and make a hand. Or they could be even fancier and have like a mechanical hand built. They could have taken some other creature's hand or paw and could have used that. Like, I felt it was pretty open, and I was kind of happy with that. So they decided, they went back to the wizard family, the wizard house, where they got their weapon enchantments. And they wanted to talk to him about what the hell to do. Because it seems like whenever they are not sure about something, they're like, we gotta find a wizard. He'll tell us. It's like, really, you probably should find a cleric. But while the term wizard and the concept of a wizard is fairly ubiquitous, even to like the general public, cleric, not so much. That's more of a D&D type thing. And paladin as well. None of them had any idea what a paladin was. And yes, you can insert your "what's a paladin" joke here. They had no idea. I had to explain what a paladin was. But yeah, cleric, they weren't just... They're still working out what that is. And I think the concept of, like, worshipping a fictional deity is a little weird to them. They're not used to that. Anyways. So they went to the wizard, they talked to him, and he kind of told what I just said, although not as detailed. He's basically like, well, you can find a hand, or maybe you could find an engineer in one of the big cities to make a sort of mechanical hand, although that'd be expensive. It's like, they don't want to spend any more money. And they started to get upset that, like, they had to do all this nonsense just to get a hand. It's like, well, what the fuck do you expect? You don't have a hand, and you want a hand. Like, maybe you're upset that you lost the hand in the first place, but you're trying to have a god perform a miracle for you, and it's not just going to be snap your fingers. So they continued on. They went to Tribord, where they started. And basically, my mom wanted to find, like, a gambling cheater. She wanted to find a cheater so that she could catch him cheating and cut off his hand. Just like in the old days.
Why can't I go outside?
The outside...
And so they go to Tribord. They go to the inn. They start gambling. They start playing cards. And she's like, okay, I want to catch somebody cheating. I'm like, okay. Roll a 1d6. And if you roll a 1,
sure
you
is a
catch
pretty
someone
day.
cheating.
Yeah, the weather is great.
Sure enough, she rolls
It'd
a
be
1.
perfect
I'm
for a
like,
picnic.
okay. You're pretty sure the guy across from you, greasy dude, is cheating, and no one else seems to have noticed. And so she calls him out. She, like, grabs his wrist, some cards fall out of his sleeve, and, you know, it's clear that he's cheating. He's been cheating. She says, though, it's really, like, against her honor to actually cut off this guy's hand, which is sort of odd, I think. This guy is a criminal, and, you know, often paladins find it within themselves to sort of deliver justice. But she felt she could not do it herself. So she forced him to give all the money back to everyone that he won. And then I think they were just hoping that someone else that, you know, witnessed all this would later kill the guy. outside, and they would just cut off the hand then. They didn't really want to do it themselves to kill this fairly innocent guy, I guess. Which, you know, these are all like, you know, moms, middle-aged women, older women. They're not ruthless assassins,
Where'd
really.
Flynn go?
You know, they're not. They just don't have the capacity to go around and just stab people in the neck and plot out murders, and it's just that's my domain. That's what I do.
But
That's not really for them, so
a dead end.
I can sort of understand. They just don't feel comfortable. I chop off this guy's hand, because they've been killing like goblins and giants and
I say we
orcs and stuff, and it's all like, these are evil creatures. You know, you just kill them, you fight them.
Where are you?
But other human beings, that might take a little bit more work. So I'm like, okay, it's a little. You know, you hoping that someone else kills them because you want to be too passive to do it yourself. I was like, all right, you know, roll a d6, and if you roll a 1, someone else kills him. Sure enough, she rolls a 1, and they just erupt in cheers and shouting. They're so happy that someone else killed this criminal for them. I'm like, oh, this would never happen in our group, but that's okay. So sure enough, they find him a couple hours later in an alley, dead, and they do cut off his hand. They were okay doing that. So they've got the hand. They go on to the next town, where they do find a temple to the god of healing. And it's really in like disarray, because this town just is not very religious. It's a very mercantile town. They just don't care, and it's fallen out of favor. So broken windows, cracked pews, graffiti, blah blah blah. So they perform the ritual. They perform the miracle. They beseech the god of healing. They offer up the 200 gold, and sure enough, she gets her hand back. Well, she gets a new hand. So that was just an interesting little side quest that, in the end, did come out because of the bear attack, although not, you know, directly. So, okay, it's all good. They spend some time, the day, sort of fixing up the temple, and they move on. What time are we at here? Oh my god, I've been talking for this long? Jesus Christ. You guys never stop me. Okay, I'll try to wrap up. So they end up getting to Silvery Moon, and they're like, okay, we're just gonna sneak into this carriage house. We're gonna use the sword of invisibility. We're gonna grab the magic items, and we're just gonna rush out. They weren't aware of the alarm spell, because again, they have no magical character that could even. I couldn't even like hint at it. They have no magical potential. I couldn't even hint like there is magic in the area. I just can't. I cannot. They have no magic characters. They have the Paladin, but Paladin in Dungeon World, like, it's just... They have lay on hands. That's like their only magical thing, and it's just, no, I couldn't do it. So, you know, my aunt goes in, she grabs the magical box with all the items. She rushes out. She gets immediately followed by these Cambions, who are, they know something's up. They see the door magically opening by itself and all that. My sister's like right outside the door to the carriage house, and as the guards start rushing out, she uses the bear roar. Because she's thinking like, oh, yeah, like, that'll stop these guards, and they, you know, that'll give us time to run away. It was creative. It just was not, they didn't think it through. That's really their problem, of not thinking everything through. And I know that they didn't know that these guys were actually half demons, and they're not scared of a fucking bear. But also, they're in like this extremely wealthy, well-to-do city of learning and enlightenment, and it's got a big gate, walls all around it and stuff. there's never been a bear inside the city. There probably never will be a bear inside the city. It was just completely implausible. And yeah, it just... Not to mention the fact that it left her right there next to the carriage house. And she wasn't like throwing her voice and like, oh, the bear's over there. Like the bear was, the sound was right there. It was not thought out. So the guards come out, they see her sitting right there. They just basically assume she stole stuff. So one of them like stabs her in the stomach. She's trying to protest her innocence and stuff like that. And she's like, you can search me and blah, blah, blah. And again, it's sort of cruel because these are fucking half demons. Like, they don't give a shit. Like, they're gonna assume you stole it. They're just gonna kill you and search your corpse later. And sometimes, yeah, you have to realize that talking your way out is not going to work. You have to realize at a certain point, like, these guys are gonna kill me. I can't talk my way out of it. Having no evidence on my body does not always leave me, you know, innocent and free. And so I think at a certain point she did realize that they were just gonna kill her. And the woman, the mage in the tower, comes out. And I'm summarizing now, but their first plan was to go to the tower itself. I don't know why. I think, again, they were misremembering details, and they just assumed that, like, oh, the treasure's in the tower. And they heard from, like, a bartender that this noble mage woman lives there, and, you know, she would only... Her friends are only wealthy nobles, and they're like... My mom's like, oh, my paladin's a noble. And I'm like, yeah, but you're, like, a garbage noble. Like, if you're a noble that's going into some like goblin den and like rummaging around in feces and stuff for treasure, you're not a wealthy good noble. I'm sorry, it's just not the way of it. But they bought her like some really expensive like noble clothing. Again, they spent like 200 gold on this because they thought it was that important. I'm like, you know, it's their money. I'm not going to tell them what to do or anything, but what are you doing? And then she went up to the tower. The woman opens the door, and my mom is just... my poor mom. She just cannot be, like, a stern, arrogant noble. She's like... She tried to pass off this story of she came from across the ocean, and she's just exploring this beautiful city, and she wants to learn more, and she wants to see the inside of the tower and learn about its architecture, or something like that. And I'm just like, this woman is pissed off. She tells you to piss off, and she just, like, slams the door. And I told her, I was like, if you want to be a proper noble, you need to be just a complete asshole. Most of the time. I mean, not all nobles are like that, but you needed to be more stern and more serious and more just noble than that. I'm sorry. On some nobles, maybe that would have worked, but this is a woman that consorts with demons. Like, she's not gonna be nice. I'm sorry. And again, maybe she didn't know that, but still. I had to play it out as the way it is. So, when the woman comes out of the tower later, and the Cambions are, like, attacking my sister, my mom now tries to be the arrogant noble. And now it's too late. And now... the woman's like, you have no authority here, get out of here, you know, go back across the ocean. And so they got into a big fight. It was not looking good for them because my aunt had run away with the treasure back to the inn. And she was trying... Again, it's like the meta game. As soon as the fight broke out, my aunt was like, oh, I rushed back there. And I'm like, that's not how things work. You can't do that. And so the whole fight, she's just like, I rushed back in, I'm rushing in, and it's just like, it doesn't, you went back to the inn. Eventually, she got so annoying, I'm like, alright, for fuck's sake, you make it back, because you're worried about your friends. It's like, this is not... Whatever, you know, it's a learning process. So she rushes back, and she uses the bag, she turns it inside out and puts it over the woman's head, the mage's head. And this is where we had the realization that I had misinterpreted what she said earlier. And what she had actually done was reached into the bag. And so I'm like, okay, I'll retcon it. That's what you did. You lost your hand, so I'll make it consistent. And so you put the bag over this woman's head, and she loses her head. This is obviously extremely powerful. And even they realize that it's extremely powerful, because she did it to a Cambion as well. And I'm like, okay, this ability is not going to last forever. Like, something is going to be breaking apart in the bag because of this. Maybe that's, like, cheap of me. But, you know, it's just the way things go. So she very easily dispatches the woman and one of the Cambions, and they do end up killing off the other Cambion. My mom actually dies. She drops below 0 HP. And it's Dungeon World, so you roll 2d6, you see what you get. She has to make a bargain with death. And so she meets with death in the afterlife, and death says, okay, you know, you're clearly courageous, but let us put that to the test. You have 1 month to go find a dragon, kill it, and eat its heart. As I was thinking of, you know, Sigurd. Otherwise, you die. Or, you know, you can choose right now to die. And she is like, okay, you know, I accept this quest. And they, like, looted some bodies, and I at this point, I was being much kinder to them, so I was like, okay, you loot the bodies, and you make it out of town, and no one's the wiser. But I think there's going to be some character changes for next time. My aunt is going to be switching to a wizard, because I think they realize, and she realizes now, the power of magic, and so she wants to be more magically inclined. Which is just like me when I started playing D&D. I started as a rogue, and eventually I switched over to magic characters, and I never looked back. And my mom is going to be switching to a cleric, partly because she thinks there's no way they're going to be able to kill a dragon, which is not the best attitude. And partly because she wants to be more of a supporting character and an assisting character, rather than a killing character. I think she's realized she doesn't really have a mind for thinking about killing people, and so she just wants to be a helper, which is fine. You know, they'll have a wizard and a cleric. Their problem is my brother-in-law playing the fighter, he seems to only like ranged weapons, which is really unique. To be a fighter, to be really interested in just being like a hero fighter, but only he uses a crossbow. That's like his special weapon. I would have not guessed that. I would have expected him to be like a sword and shield, rush in and, you know, take everything. Like, no, he just wants to sit in the back with his crossbow. But he wants to be a hero. Like, it's strange. It means that they're not going to have a frontline fighter, because my mom is not going to be the frontline cleric. So, we'll see how that goes. Overall, you know, they're still enjoying it. It's going good. I'm going to start to involve their input a little bit more, and I think they're slowly learning. You know, this was a rougher session for them. Things didn't go swimmingly, but they got to have those, they got to take their lumps, you know, they got to have the bad experiences. They got to learn that not everything is just, oh, everything works out for us because we're the heroes. You know, bad decisions happen. There are consequences. You know, I could be a much nicer DM, but I try to DM as if I was how I would like to play, you know? I would like there to be consequences for stupidity, because otherwise, what's the point of me thinking about proper plans and stuff if it all just works out? There needs to be death and failure as a threat. So, overall, it's going good. Alright, I've talked way too long. God, I just never shut up. Imagine if I had to talk about Stars Without Number. So check out the 3999 video. You're going to find some interesting pictures used, as you'll see. We got the 40K video on the Emperor coming this week. We got the rest of Space Marine coming on this channel, and some more Final Fantasy 13. My name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. See you fine folks next week.